This is probably a controversial take, but I think that the voices of immigrants or the children of immigrants only become valid when we learn American history. Like, all of American history, the truth of America, because we are not a part of the original races of America. The original races of America are the native indigenous peoples of America, European white colonizers, African slaves. To be real honest about my education as the child of immigrants, I was born and raised in Colorado. Not so diverse when I was growing up as a millennial. In fact, we eventually moved from an apartment sort of like inside closer to Denver to the west, like near the mountains, in the suburbs. And we went to school, me and my siblings went to school with a lot of white people. That's it. That's what we mostly saw. And though our education was good, as far as I knew what good was, there were a lot of missing pieces in our education. So if you ask me about American history, I'm telling you right now that I don't feel like I got a good understanding of American history at all. My lack of education stretched into my adulthood, into me being a teacher. And it wasn't until I was able to experience the diversity of humanity, teaching in the cities, teaching in the suburbs, meeting all sorts of people from, the Midwest all the way to the West Coast, teaching in 7 different schools and 6 different districts, that I started to understand how complex humanity was inside the grind of life, because I was going through a lot of traumatic sort of events in my own life, as well as teaching in the United States education system. I didn't see society as it was until 2020. It was the video of Ahmaud Arbery's death that shocked me to my core. I just couldn't understand why a couple of white dudes thought it necessary to erase a human from existence just because they assumed he did something bad. What was the bad thing that Ahmaud Arbery did? He was black. That's it. Those white men looked at him and saw him as a criminal simply because he was black. And they decided it was within their power to erase him. You have to understand how skewed my understanding of race was prior to 2020. We, as immigrants and the children of immigrants, there's such a rush to take on all of the information like coming at you, not just like verbally, but like you're living it out. You're the first generation. You don't know what came before, what's coming after. You're just kind of like this guinea pig in this new environment, and you don't even realize that you were in a new environment because you have your parents, they're going through the grind of life, you're just going with the flow, and you don't realize how much information is coming at you and how much you're taking in until you actually sit back to understand all of the pieces that came prior to you, waking up and having an epiphany about your place in life. And turns out understanding my place in life is understanding where I fall in the timeline of America. My parents were refugee immigrants from Laos. They went from Laos to Thailand to the United States of America in 1979. And then I was born in the 80s. And so I had a huge gap of knowledge and I didn't even know it. One of the biggest ones being that people of color had just gotten their right to exist in America like yesterday due to segregation being removed and the civil rights movement fighting for my rights. See, a huge part of my lack of education as the child of immigrants is that I was educated by a lot of white people. which means that a lot of the facts that they were giving me, a lot of the history that I was learning was never actually humanized. And I didn't know that. And so when I was learning about slavery, when I was learning about the Civil War, when I was learning about segregation, when I was learning about anything that had to do with the races, like Chinese immigrants building railroads or Japanese internment camps. All of those different events that I listed with all of those different groups of people, honestly, they all just blended. They all became one. I didn't know what came earlier, what came later. I thought that slavery and the Civil War happened at the same time. I thought that segregation was just roughly a couple of years afterwards. The Chinese immigrants building the railroads and the Japanese internment camps, I thought was happening around roughly the same time, and everything just blended. My white teachers did their job of sharing these facts with me, but what they failed to do is communicate with me that these were real people under real oppression, really suffering inside of a system that was created to hold back Indigenous peoples, to hold back Black Americans, to hold back people of color. The way that I was taught, it felt like it was fiction versus nonfiction. On top of everything, I was Christian. I still am. But I was indoctrinated in the way of white Christian nationalism. That's a story for another day. I'm finding myself as a Hmong American having to educate a lot of my fellow Hmong people about American history. I was an English teacher for over a decade. I'm no longer a teacher, but I can't help it. Like, the educator is still in me. And I've found inside of the past year, as well as this year, under the occupation of the Trump administration, having to explain history to a lot of my peers as the children of immigrants. And though I don't mind that, I'm starting to see that actual ignorance, not having knowledge about history isn't the problem, because we all start off that way, not knowing everything. The problem is entering into willful ignorance. Like what I'm seeing happen to the Hmong community today, if immigrants and children of immigrants don't learn the truth of American history, like what happened to Indigenous Americans and Black Americans by white European Americans, then our voices are useless, ineffective, invalid. Please do not choose willful ignorance. Go learn the truth. You're gonna see that greatness isn't backwards, it's forwards.